Now, the thing that I want to talk about also is that in this kind of a dog, this is sort of like a very normal shaped dog. You can change these things by just looking at the shapes. Because remember, when we started out, I just had a little line, I had a box like this. Remember that? It was just a line, a box, I did this, I did this. I said that's basically was the dog, remember? Well, if you have a dachshund or if you have a little, Chihuahua or something, you have to realize that you can take these simple shapes and you can do it any way you want. You can take a shape like this and you can make it very big with very small legs like this that are down here. You can take it, so it's kind of like a big fat dog with, little tiny legs and a tiny little tail, maybe with a big head. I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is that you can actually make it into a very tall dog. You could make it into a thin, tall dog like this that has long legs and maybe has a long head like this. And you start to work with these. But do you see how the shapes can be changed dramatically by just having the freedom to think simple? Now you can start to look at it and say, oh, maybe I'll have this big sort of pug-nosed dog here, or maybe I'm going to have a long sort of Afghan type dog with long ears over here. Maybe this one's got a big pug nose up in the front like this, is always angry. Or I'm keeping it very simple so that you can see that from the same principle of what I started with at the early point, we can actually take and not just do something that I would call sort of a typical mutt dog, but actually have some fun and start to build out a dog that's actually going to be, maybe have this funny big, chin and teeth sticking up here like this, or, and it can actually, have these, sort of pointy little ears or whatever it is, or you can start to play around with it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that you want to think of it in terms of shapes. And that's what really opens up the idea of how you can have fun with dogs. You can even make the legs fatter. You could move them out. Like for instance, on this little guy, I'm just going to do an example here. If I want to sit there and using the same exact principles, and I give him, he's such a big breasted fellow, I'm going to say here. What if he's got these big fat shoulders and legs with these whole large massive shoulders like this, and maybe I'm going to even make him more sort of flat muzzle. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to just kind of give him this thing like this, and give him sort of an overbite with this teeth like this, and sort of give him an angry look, like he's like those dogs that are sort of like that, and maybe this other leg comes out here, and it's also, you can sort of feel the fatness and the toughness of this guy, and maybe he's got this tiny little ears, that are sort of overlapping like this, and I'm just going to work it in like this sort of, and give him a big old collar, and maybe he's got those, spikes sticking out like this or something. And then he's got maybe just a tiny little tail sticking out here, and then there's big old legs here coming up with the big feet, round to his butt's huge maybe, or something like that. You got to have a little fun with this. But again, just in this really rough drawing that I've done here, just a very rough drawing here, I'm just going to do it like that. You can see a massive difference between that dog and this dog. But I'm using the same principles. So basically, we're trying to teach you principles that you can apply to open up your own imagination and have really a lot of fun. And that's really where we're going with this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of get into the facial aspect of it. Let me put this on top of here for a second. Because, like I said before, in the facial aspect of a dog, it's very much like a human in the sense. I want to just talk about one thing here that's sort of very important for us to practice all the time. One of the first things actually that Eric Larson said was, since we're going to be dealing with shapes, simple shapes like balls, spheres, you really do want to sort of practice actually drawing circles. And the reason I say that is because you want to make sure that you really understand, or should I say feel like you would if you were sculpting, what is the shape of the object that you're trying to draw? Because these are lines, these are not real shapes, but you have to feel those shapes. So in some sense, it actually doesn't hurt to practice. Actually, it was a guy named Bruce McIntyre who worked on Pinocchio, one of the first people that started to train me in terms of cartoon art. And he said, just practice doing that in the beginning. Sometimes it doesn't hurt. Because as you get into it, when you start to draw, these shapes, then you'll start to feel more of those shapes. And that's really what is important. You really got to try to do that.